Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. And yeah, it's been a while. It's been 2 weeks since my SMS Derflinger video, a ship that I thoroughly love, and I put a lot of effort into it. So it was kind of heartbreaking to see the video not even breach 3,000 views. That was discouraging. And when you're already down, why not play the French? Or anyway, today we actually have a hidden gem. The Mogador, rank 3, battle rating 4.7, and she's quite the beast. If you put it versus the right opposition, under the right circumstances, in the right position, that is now already quite a disclaimer that the ship is fantastic and amazing, but it's not the best in every situation. And it has a certain playstyle, it has a certain purpose, it has certain packs of strengths, and they are somewhat sometimes contradicting. But let's get right into it. So it is a tech tree ship at battle rating 4.7 after the Marceau and just before the Champ d'Arc. And with the Champ d'Arc and the Dugontois and the Les Triomphants and the Les Marlins, it actually shares the battle rating. So you have quite a strong lineup. But being already at the same battle rating, in the same tech tree, with light cruisers that have 8 155mm guns, whereas you're sporting 8 138.6mm guns, kind of gives away that while the ship has really heavy firepower, in particular for a destroyer, it's not automatically game winning. But let's get right into it. And I think one of the most important statistics is that this ship has a speed of 80 kilometers per hour, which makes it one of the fastest destroyers in the game. And then there is also the thing that this is a big ship for a destroyer. And I try to kind of show this somewhat in the gameplay, that this ship is fast and has one hell of a salvo firepower. But also, especially at the very end, you will see that the ship has some issues when it comes to fighting certain opposition. And this is a bit of a one sad moment, because the game mechanics are, when it comes to your firepower, somewhat against you. But let's have a look into it. So you have your stock HE with 36 millimeters of penetration, courtesy of 3.41 kilograms of TNT. This is not that much far off from the Tashkent with its 6 130mm guns, and it is heavier than the infamous US 5-inch 38 with 3.22 kilograms. Then there is your SAP, and you get this at rank 1, and this is really the hard-hitting hammer. You have 30 millimeters of penetration just from your TNT filling, courtesy of 2.53 kilograms, and your maximum penetration is 77. Now that is only half of what you get from the beta SAP on the US destroyers, which then have just roughly a third of your TNT. But now we come to the reload, because that's all the shell types that there are. Sadly, there is no APHE, with a high penetration value, just like the Tashkent, which has up to 183 millimeters. So this is where the 6.7 second reload comes in, and this favors you well with your 8 guns. That means you can prepare heavy salvos, and thanks to your heavy shells, you can be in an advantageous position when it comes to long range engagements, especially versus the 5-inch 38s from the Americans, and in particular if you embrace throttle gameplay. Because the ship is so fast, it means it has a lot of power, meaning it also can stop relatively quickly, and you can literally dodge shells, not from point blank of course, but you get the idea. So at range, playing with your throttle, and keeping your salvos. But that's not all, right? Keeping your salvos on point. That's what I tried to say. Because this ship has two super firing turrets in the front and two super firing turrets in the rear. But the magic comes from the ship actually having bad AA, because that means you have a lot of room for the rear super firing turret, which is actually 360 degrees rotatable, which is not just a good thing if you are switching, from left side, for example, to the right side, or from port to starboard. It actually means that you have fantastic firing angles, and this makes it one of the most outstanding destroyers in that aspect, because most of the time you're actually driving or sailing towards something, a cap, a position somewhere behind an island or something. And while your frontal firing arc is very limited, and in comparison to the Le Malin or Le Malin, it only has two of those guns facing forward. So already there you have 3 times the firepower. Or, well, actually the middle turret also has good firing arcs, but not that great. So you have double the firepower than, single mounted 138mm guns. It's really good, right? But I've mentioned that you already have no armor and no AA. So when I'm saying no AA, I'm talking about a single twin 37mm, which counts as your secondaries if you choose the option to use your secondaries, and also two twin 13.2mm guns, which just don't cut it, quite literally. And then you have also 10 550mm torpedoes. They're all right. You also have them in a triple launcher and a twin launcher on each side. So again, really, really good firing arcs, and the opportunity to quickly switch sides faster than with slow rotating center line mounted torpedo tubes. So that's really good. And so basically this ship boils down to having those satisfying heavy salvos. But there are some problems associated with it, because you have to hit a module to deal damage. And sometimes you hit the ship over and over again, but you just don't hit, central modules, machinery spaces, the pumps, boilers, the magazines, and that can be utter frustration, especially when the opposition has much lighter shells, but with much better penetration going through the entirety of your ship, despite your best angling efforts or whatever. And I don't mean angling here in terms of making your non-existing armor work, but rather to, throw off the enemy's aim or hide some of your compartments behind, your own meat shield, if that makes sense. And so you have to pick your fights. You have to be picky about picking your fights. And that is not a direct, straightforward gameplay. Now, one of the advantages compared to, for example, the Dugong 3 is that you keep your reload at 6.7 seconds for a much longer time. This is not a blistering reload of speed. If you think about the Z46, for example, with 3-second reload, but having only light HE and no SAP or base fuse HE, and also the British HMS Diana with 3 seconds, all at the same battle rating. By the way, the IJN Akitsuki, has also 8 guns with more than double your rate of fire, but again, only access to HE, with 2.9 seconds reload, and 2.8 second reload goes obviously to all the US destroyers with 5-inch 38s, which are almost all of them, and the USS Frank Knox being one of the most played ones. But if you then get into the mindset of such sad ships like the RN Bartolomeo Colleone, God, I love to say that, which has 15 seconds reload on its 8 6-inch guns, then you kind of get the idea where the heavy salvo for a destroyer saying comes from. or as I just said. So the torpedoes are not particularly good. Your AA is trash. You have no armor. You're a big target, and you lose crew really quick. But then, for a ship of that configuration, you have really fast turret rotation speed. You have fantastic firing angles for the first three turrets. You have really heavy HE and SAP rounds, and if you can make that work, if this is everything that you need, then this ship is really fantastic, and it's a hidden gem. And honestly, finally something else that I could enjoy other than US destroyers. I mean, US destroyers are a bit brain dead. You just, you know, cut the enemy down with 1,000 strikes, and then they have to suffer through the repair cycles and everything. This ship is a bit more of an honest fighter, and giving a fair fight is for suckers, but sometimes it can be as frustrating as it can feel rewarding, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. And it's one of the best French destroyers, and it's certainly better than, for example, the German Narvik destroyers, even though they have even bigger guns. But it's some of the best destroyer, already almost fighting at a cruiser level, right? And some of the cruisers you just can't pen because you have a lack of your penetration on the SAP rounds. And honestly, those SAP rounds that are so good with their TNT, it almost makes no difference, right? So I think more effective is the hailstorm of shells from the American 5-inch 38s at close quarters. You lack the flexibility, but it's an honest ship about the one thing that we love in naval forces, and that is firing your guns. It's just good at this, but it's not overpowered. It's not foolproof, and in fact, you need to command her very gallantly and with some brain between your ears to get the most out of this ship. If you make it work, it's super satisfying, and honestly, I love it. Now, one advantage of this speed that I really need to highlight is that you can get to places and get into position with the speed of a patrol boat, but with the firepower of a destroyer, and from the destroyer spawn. So you can get, as you saw with some of the gameplay, you can play catch up. You can go between the caps. You have the speed. You don't necessarily have the maneuverability or the close quarters capabilities of some other destroyers, but the speed is all that matters to make the distance. As you can see here, I was fighting around C. Now I am near B, and the match is only halfway through. Yes, it has to do with the caps being capped not so quickly as usual, but again, you can support your patrol boats from a ambush position almost, compared to the other destroyers that just have to go around the island, and you're already there. And so, depending on the map, and I love to say this, depending on the map, you can choose which playstyle you best use to your advantage for the benefit of your team. You can be a really good support destroyer. Don't be at the front line. Don't be stupid. That's throwing away so many advantages. But late game, you still have this firepower, right? And you still have this speed, and that's fantastic. But honestly, then again, it turns a little bit into a glass cannon late game, or versus a cruiser, where then you're a bit where you can get caught off guard, so to speak. If you can pick your fights, this is really strong. If the fights get forced upon you on the conditions of the enemy, this is not a US destroyer that can just blast its way out of every situation and fight planes and fight patrol boats and fight everything at the same time. This is, as you can see here, versus the SKR-7, sometimes a ship that just dies. And that's it for me today. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like if you did. Subscribe if you want to see more. And as usual, we will see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.